this is the time where we have an open dialogue and discussion around a specific topic with a specific person, and that specific person is Perry Marshall. Perry was with us last PodMAX event. He came through as a guest. We got him on a show, and then he happened to be around for lunch, and we started a conversation with him, and it was just extraordinary. And we said, hey, there's so much to Perry. We should really have him back because there's so much value and relevance to what he's doing and what we can learn. So that's the conversation we're going to have for the next 40 minutes or so. So please grab a bite, grab your stuff, and enjoy the working lunch because you're going to be able to engage in this conversation with us. Help me welcome Perry. What's doing, sir?
Hey, just another day of mystery, suspense, and intrigue. Castrating crocodiles, rescuing damsels in distress, and enjoying a beautiful sunny day in Chicago where the snow's melting a little bit. So,
wow,
good to see y'all. And like how all switched on everybody is here. You're all paying attention. So that's really great.
Let me put you on the spot for a minute because you came through. Eric and I had the good fun and pleasure to interview you for our shows prior to getting you into the PodMAX mix last month. You did that. Everything seemed to work out. We invited you back. I imagine just like us all, we're busy people. Why say yes and show up here today?
I've done a lot of podcast interviews where somebody's just like, well, okay, let me see what the next question is. And it was that everybody was switched on and engaged and paying attention and happy to be there. Like there's an awful lot of Zoom meetings where everybody's like, okay, well, what's next? And so and then we got into a good conversation. Like, okay, that was good. So that was fun jazz improvisation. Let's go back to that club and play again. So here we are.
Excellent.
Well, congratulations. It's not easy to do that. I know this. I'm very well aware.
Well, thanks for that confirmation and feedback. We appreciate that. We are always in learning mode, always open to say, hey, what worked of what we just did? What should we continue to do? What we can improve on? So this conversation, I know we're going to get into what you call head trash. Is that the phrase you use?
Yes, that's the phrase I prefer.
That you prefer. Well, certainly we're going to get into all that, but I want to start with how I started last time because it's still so fascinating and intriguing. And maybe you can just speak briefly just to sort of position this. If you were to go out into the wild and look up a bio on Perry Marshall, one phrase is going to be consistent in the bio. Now, first of all, here's one of his best-selling books. 80/20 Sales and Marketing. So if you look on the back of this, it has a blurb, and like any of his blurbs, it says the phrase, Perry Marshall is one of the world's most expensive business consultants. I found that fascinating because I always thought the trap is that, well, wait a minute, if you say that, aren't you going to turn people off and say, well, I can't do anything with him because I can't afford him. So what is the strategy there?
Well, so let me tell the rack the shotgun story that's in the 80/20 book. I don't believe I've told this story to your crowd. Sure. So my friend John Paul Mendoza, he's in his 60s now, but when he was 17, he dropped out of high school, his senior year of high school. He hitchhiked to Las Vegas and he became a professional gambler. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, his mother was just delighted that he was doing this, right? So he's living in Vegas. He's playing poker for a living, 17 years old, fake ID, all of that. And he's like, this is kind of harder than I thought it was going to be. I read all those poker books. So he goes to a gambling bookstore and he bumps into a guy who turns out to be a professional gambler who runs a gambling ring. And they get to talking, and John's like, so do you think you could teach me what you guys do? And he says, well, for a percentage of your earnings, we can teach you what we do. And so they shake on it. And then jump in the Jeep, John, we're going for a ride. And so they're driving in the Jeep, and John goes, okay, so how do I win more poker games? And the guy says, John, the way you win more poker games is you need to play people who are going to lose. You don't go looking for professional gamblers. You look for marks. Like a mark is like the kid from Wichita that just got inheritance money from his grandmother and he just came to lost wages and he thinks he's going to get rich. Like, you need to play that guy. And John goes, well, where do I find that guy? And he goes, here, I'll show you. And he pulls into the parking lot of a strip club, and they go into the strip club, and there's women and rock and roll and, you know, lots of distractions, and it's loud, and there's all these people drinking and everything. And he sits John down at a table, and Rob, the guy who was talking to him, always carried a sawed-off shotgun everywhere he went. And he pulls a sawed-off shotgun out of his jacket, and he puts it under the table, and he opens the chamber, and then he racks the shotgun in the middle of this noisy club. And there's a few biker dudes over in the corner, and they're like, hey, where'd that noise come from? And the owner comes over. He's like, hey, what are you guys doing over here? It's all right, man. Just teaching the lad a lesson. We're not going to create any violence or anything. John, did you see those people who turned their heads when they heard that noise? And John goes, yeah. And he goes, don't play poker with them. They're not marks. Play poker with everybody else. And that's what I call racking the shotgun. And it's separating the few from the many.
How do we apply that?
Okay,
So, yeah.
When I say I'm one of the most expensive business consultants in the world, I have racked the shotgun.
Wow.
Okay. And I have separated people who respond to authority and expertise from people who don't.
Wow.
And I'll tell you a story about this that's kind of funny. So about 12 years ago, I got asked to speak at it was like an evening seminar thing here in Chicago. And so I'm speaking at this thing, and there was a break, and all these people were coming up to me, giving me their business cards, asking if they could take me out to lunch. And I could tell, because I was an Amway distributor years ago, I could tell that most of these people wanted to pitch me on some kind of like an MLM or something, okay? And so I politely turned them down, and I said, and then when the session started, I said, hey, everybody's asking me if I could go out to lunch. I said, I'll go out to lunch for $725 an hour because that's my rate. And if you take me to lunch, you will get all of my attention, all of my focus, all of my brain power, but I don't do free lunches. And that's racking the shotgun, right? Well, so a few weeks later, I mentioned this in a blog post, and I got this scathing email from this guy, and he goes, you are the reason that America is going down the toilet. You are the it's money-sucking scumbags like you who are destroying America with your capitalism. I'm a sales guy. I always made six figures all my career, and I never turned down lunch with anybody. So I posted that on my blog, and it was actually my first blog post. I had just gotten WordPress installed on my website. And so I put this, so I put like the story and then his comments, and then I responded to it. And you can go find this if you want. It's called Perry's Greed. Now, by the way, I want to say I did not do this then the way I would do now. I was not as gracious about it. I think I was a little cocky and offensive about the way I handled it. And so I just want to preface that because I don't quite do this the way I did back then. But nonetheless, this blog post went viral. And it was like, hey, look at this asshole who charges $725 an hour for lunch. And he's mean to, like how mean this guy is. Now, I wasn't mean. I definitely wasn't mean, okay? And so all of a sudden, all these people are arguing in the comments about whether I have the right to do this or not. And so a very interesting thing happened. I started looking at there. So there's the people that are for Perry getting paid for his time, and the people against Perry getting paid for his time. And I went into my Infusionsoft account, and all of the people in favor of me getting paid for my time were people who were paying me. And all of the people against me getting paid for my time had never bought anything ever. And some of them had been on my list for years. Okay. And the most common comment was, thank you, Perry, because what I learned from you was to stop giving free advice, waiting for people to give me money and trying to earn their approval so that then they would give me the money. Instead, I like put up a paywall, and then I started actually getting paid to fill in the blank, build websites, coach fitness, like whatever it is they did. Thank you, Perry. So I charge for my time and you charge for your time, and God bless you and God bless me.
Oh, goodness gracious. There's so much power in what you're saying. I know everybody in the room has it hits home and resonates, and we have our own version of it because I think that really it takes time and effort, if you will, and work on yourself in order to get to that place. I spent years and years and years and years and years not valuing myself, not have any self-worth, thinking that, I'll just tiptoe a product out there and please might somebody buy this, and certainly undercutting tremendously what it's worth and what it should be. Thus also a whole other conversation, right? So now people who would otherwise say, oh yeah, I need that. They're like, but why is it $19? That just doesn't make sense, right? So there's all that. So you saying, Perry, you charge $7.50 for an hour of your time for lunch is the equivalent of any of us saying, well, I charge for a product or service. Is it in line? Is it appropriate? And how many times have we put out a product undercutting ourselves because we think we're going to get those responses? So how do we begin that mental game within ourselves in order to come forward with our $750 for lunch with us?
Well, so let's just understand something, is that expensive people are, so a really, 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 really good software programmer is 3 times as expensive as a regular one, but he's 10 or 50 times better in terms of the product he can create that you can go sell, right? Like software is pretty sophisticated industry now, right? Like if you want software written that's going to be really good, and you don't want to cut corners, then you hire the expensive people. Okay, so this means you need to be the expensive person and you need to be worth it. Well, this creates a whole cascade of other things that you need to justify it. So first of all, you have to rack the shotgun for, I'm asking the right person to pay me $7.50 an hour to go to lunch with me. Because there's only so many people that I can help where it's actually going to be worth it. Like they have to have the money, they have to be in the right business. So like last week, I talked to a physical therapist you know, like the kind of guy when you sprain your arm or like one of those people. He charges $400 an hour. Now that's a pretty expensive physical therapist, but he's good. Like he knows exactly what you do to get a herniated disc straightened out, because it's not, it's like, it's emotional stuff, it's physical stuff, it's nutritional stuff, like the whole thing. And his clients get results, so they are willing to pay. Well, the first thing is you need to rack the shotgun for, I don't want to play poker with these people. I only want to play poker with these people. Okay, then the next thing is it forces you to figure out, what are you innately gifted at? This is really hard for people to get right, because a modern education is woefully out of date. Modern education is stuck in the industrial age and like trying to teach people cookie cutter skills. Cookie cutter skills do not get you very far in the 20th century. 21st century, you have to be a problem solver. So like, what do you innately do better than other people? And then you further refine it with practice and all that. Okay, then there's another piece, and this actually pulls it all together. I call it the if then else guarantee. And it works like this. If you are the right kind of person in the first place, like if me even talking to you makes sense, right? Whatever that criteria is, for all of you, it's different. And you ought to have an idea about what that is. If you're the right person, and if you cooperate with me the way that I need you to, like when I sell you this thing, you're going to have to do something too. So did you follow the steps? Like, okay, I sold you $100,000 piece of software. Was it installed right? Was it on everybody's workstations? Did everybody go to training? Did all the information get imported to the databases? Are all the customer service representatives trained on how to use a software? Like all of that. Like if you buy our $100,000 software package and you go through steps A to Z, if right person did the right stuff, then you will get a result. I guarantee you that this will get a result, because, or else if you don't get the result, skin in the game back to me. It's going to cost me something if you don't get your result. So when my friend Tom Hubyar ran a pharmaceutical valve manufacturing company, and he's selling valves to tanks of medicine that if anybody gets sick, there's going to be a lawsuit, super conservative, selling a $4,000 valve. Tom's guarantee was, if our valve is contaminated, if it's late, if it doesn't work, I will pay for a union electrician welder to remove our valve from your tank and install the competitor's valve, which means that if our $4,000 valve doesn't work right, we will spend $40,000 to make it right. And everybody knows it'll cost us $40,000 to make it right. Tom used that guarantee to go from nothing to number one in his industry in 15 years in one of the most conservative industries that exists on the planet. He became the number one pharmaceutical valve manufacturer with a guarantee in B2B. Now, when you make a guarantee like that, it means all the ducks have to be in a row. You have to have the right person. They have to do the right things. You have to have a process for checking that they did the right things. And then you have to do the right things. And then you can charge ridiculous amounts of money, because what are you doing? You're selling results, not procedures. In every transaction, somebody's taking the risk. Usually both parties are taking the risk, but most of the time, so let me tell you another story.
Please.
Okay, I did a crazy thing in 2006. I held my first seminar, and I already had like, I don't know, 50 people signed up to come to my seminar. And I went to my mastermind meeting with Dan Kennedy. And long story short, the room and everybody came up with this idea. Perry, there's this new computer called a MacBook Pro. It's just about to come out, like in the next month. And I dare you to sell a $2,000 seminar ticket and give away a $2,000 MacBook Pro for coming to your seminar, because you'll fill the thing up and you'll have people to sell coaching to and everything. They dared me to do it, and I took them up on it. Okay. And man, like, this was a logistical friggin' nightmare. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So they were on allocation. You couldn't buy them at the Apple Store. I had to get a hold of somebody in logistics, and I had to get a hold of a salesperson. And then I had to get a bank letter of credit so that I could send them a purchase order, because guess what? Apple won't accept a purchase order from this tiny little company called Perry S. Marshall and Associates. And you give me, hundreds of thousands of dollars computers on credit. And so it was a friggin' nightmare. And then we got all this worked out. It was a ton of work. And finally, the computers arrived, and they came in a truck to the hotel. And they delivered them on the loading dock, and I was standing there watching all this happen to make sure my computers don't get stolen or anything. And they're like, so they put them in a room and they locked the door, and then they gave me this thing to sign. They gave me a clipboard, and they go, and the clipboard had a piece of paper. It said, "I absolve the Hyatt Regency O'Hare Airport Hotel of any responsibility if these get stolen." And I'm like, I'm friggin' not signing that. Are you crazy? These computers, I had $400,000 of computers in this room. I had 200 computers, $2,000 each. And I'm supposed to sign this thing that says that if they get stolen, like, I'm not going to sue them. And I'm like, I ain't signing that. And they're like, oh, it's okay. They won't get stolen. I said, if you really believe they won't get stolen, then you won't make me sign it. And they're like, whoa. Okay, now this happens every time anybody buys anything. You just don't realize it. Okay, you buy a $100,000 piece of software, somebody is guaranteeing it's going to work. Who is it? Is it the guy I bought it from, or is it me? Is anybody guaranteeing anything here? Because if they're not guaranteeing it and you're buying it, you are. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody is taking the risk. So your job when you sell anything is to mitigate the risk. And how do you mitigate the risk? If, then, else. If you're the right person and if you do the right stuff, then I will do my part and you will get a result, or else the guarantee is invoked.
Wow. As we carry through this conversation here, I know some of you are off camera, some of you are eating, which is great. But I want this to be an open dialogue as well. So if anything rings true and you have thoughts, you have questions, you have stories, you have comments that relate, please do raise your hand and let me know so we can get you involved in this conversation, because that's how this should also work. I love the idea of racking the shotgun. Can you give us some specifics, maybe in your world, that we can figure out how it relates to our world? How does someone who sells, someone who markets, someone who has a message to get out, what are some of the ways we should be racking?
Okay, everything you do in sales and marketing is racking the shotgun.
Whether we're aware of it or not. Right?
Whether you're aware of it or not. Okay, so
Yeah.
you send the email, some people open it, some people
Mhm.
don't. Rack the shotgun. Some people click on the link, some people don't. Rack the shotgun. Some people sign up for the webinar, some people don't. Some people show up on the webinar, some people don't. Some people buy on the webinar, some people take the upsell. Some people go on the Mediterranean cruise. Like, every single thing is like, it's separating these people from those people. And what most people are obsessed with is the ones that didn't.
Mm.
Like, well, I sent this email to 27,000 people and only 562 opened it. Okay. And how many of them
Yeah.
clicked and how many of them bought and how many of them, because everything is driven by the minority. It's like 1% of all the inputs control 50% of the outputs. That's 80-20. Okay. So you're always dealing with minorities. You're always dealing with
Mm.
tiny hinges that swing big doors. Now, what smart marketers do is they watch what other people do when other people rack shotguns. That's what Rob was teaching John. I rack a shotgun, you notice who turns their head. And it doesn't have to be him, it could be anybody. Okay, so like I noticed, do you remember like before Zoom and before webinars, there was teleseminars?
Yeah, we dial into the number.
Right, you dial into the number and they had a mute thing, but before you muted, there was like all this noise pinging around. And if you had like more than 100 people, it was just like a friggin' cacophony, right? Well, if you had like less than 100, when everybody was not muted, you could say hello and everybody would say hello to you back. I noticed the people who, so, hey, before I mute out, everybody say hello and tell me where you're from. And they go, hi, I'm Susie from Cleveland. Susie from Cleveland, who said something, was more likely to buy than anybody who didn't.
Wow.
That was a rack the shotgun because it's engagement. Okay, so this is going on all the time. And you just need to live in the is world. What is going on right now? Don't ask what should be going on. What is going on? Don't ask who should turn their head when they rack the shotgun. Who did turn their head when they racked the shotgun? Because it's never who you expected it to be.
Yeah,
I'm
Todd.
curious about that too, Perry. So Susie from Cleveland, was she going to buy either way? And because she was going to buy, she said, hey, I'm Susie from Cleveland. Or did the asking and her responding, oh, I'm now engaged in this conversation, did that lead her to then be more likely to buy?
Well, it's a chicken and an egg. Okay, there isn't any one answer. So she's more predisposed to buy because she's more predisposed to say hello. She's also more predisposed to say hello because she's more predisposed to buy. And she's more predisposed to buy even more after you acknowledge her and said, hi, Susie. It was great to see you today. And it was great to see you 2 weeks ago.
Right.
It's like, it's a feedback loop. It's a self-reinforcing feedback loop. In fact, one of the most powerful things you ever do in business is figure out what are the self-reinforcing feedback loops. Where are the chicken and egg situations where I don't care if it's a chicken or an egg, how do I get one or the other and get the thing spinning?
Great question, Todd. Anybody else have a question or a thought or an example of, I love, Perry, you said that, and there are so many examples of this in life. It's like, hey, whether you realize it or not, by this action, you're engaging in doing that thing. And what you said was, we are always racking the shotgun, whether we realize it or not. Like they talk about your culture in your business. You don't have to work to establish one. By definition, a culture exists. It's just, is it one that you are deliberately cultivating, or did it just happen and you're a product of it? So racking the shotgun is you're doing it day in and day out, right? Like all of our Facebook posts. I mean, let's get easy there. That seems like a low-hanging fruit. I post on Facebook. I'm going to post one way or another, but maybe I'm guessing if I'm a little more deliberate, conscious and aware of the purpose, the goal, what I want from it, whose attention I want, and then what I'm going to do about it, posting on Facebook in every moment is racking the shotgun.
Well, right. Like we teach our salespeople, the ones that work for me. Well, you're not going to get a $25,000 sale with a complete stranger today. You might get a $25,000 sale next September. You need to cultivate a relationship with them now so they're happy to talk to you, so that the $25,000 sale that happens in September is just a continuation of the relationship, and there's nothing weird or unusual about it, because they buy stuff like this and you're one of the people they regularly talk to. And so that means that racking the shotgun doesn't necessarily mean, oh, like we're going to play poker right now. Maybe it means that we're going to talk over a beer.
Niti, I'd love for you to open up your mic. I see you following along, shaking your head. What's on your mind?
I was just, excuse me. I love your book, Perry. So thank you for spending the time with us. Just curious, going back to what you mentioned a little bit earlier about, sometimes you hesitate, like where you're selling a product and, you're coming out with a product, whether it's services or coaching or whatever. And you feel this, you're a little bit hesitant, right? You're like, hey, you want to be sure about the product before you sell it to people, right? Because if you don't believe in it, nobody will. But how do you command that price, and how do you believe it? Like, is there a method that you think happens, or is it more just evolves over time, you get used to it?
Okay, well, so there's two sides of that question. One is the factual, like measurable, did they get their stuff? Did it work? Did you repair their car? Did you fix their back? Whatever, right? And then there's your mental game. And those are really two separate things. And one of the bane, like I'd say the bane of the entire marketing world is that the people who have the most self-confidence in this business are psychopaths and sociopaths. Right? Like, there's an awful lot of people selling an awful lot of stuff that doesn't work with huge amounts of confidence who don't deliver, right? Okay. And we're always afraid of that. Okay, so let's take these one at a time. First, there's the, can I deliver? Well, start with your if, then, else, and work backwards. If you can look them in the eye and say, if, then, else, guaranteed, and if it's all true, then you deserve to get their check. And that's the first step. So, I don't know, if you got to practice on some other client or whatever, you got to beta test it somehow. And if, like, look, there's always rack the shotgun again. There's always a tiny percentage of customers they'll be the guinea pig. Well, I get, okay, if you give me a 75% discount and you're not sure it'll work, but you're pretty sure it'll work, yeah, sure, I'll, like, whatever, right? See, you have to prototype the thing and make sure that you got something that works, okay? Now, then there's the mental game. Now, I think that I talked about last time when I was on that a lot of times the way that you can tell that you're about to do something important is that the cicadas inside your head start buzzing really loud. You guys have cicadas where you live? You know what cicadas are?
Sure.
Like this, my brother and I, this is what we call it. It's like when your head trash is screeching at you so loud. And what I figured out was it's usually a sign I'm doing something right. Okay, so if you've never sold a product for more than $1,000 and you introduce a $10,000 product, I don't care how much if then else prototyping and verification you did, the cicadas inside your head are going to be buzzing so loud the first time you try to sell that thing. You probably have to duct tape yourself to the chair and like get on the webinar and read the script and just friggin' do it because you're so freaked out. And the reason that you're freaked out is that there's some circuit in your brain that knows that your life is going to change. And it wants to be the somnambulant sloth sitting on the couch. It likes you being miserable. Well, yeah, I know that I'm 3 months late on my mortgage, and I know I hate it, but you know, it's kind of comfortable here. Right? And then and you push through it. Now, I don't know how much therapy we can get into. I've got a whole email series about this. If you go to perrymarshall.com/headtrash, I've got this perrymarshall/headtrash. I've got a series called Dysfunctions, Addictions, and the Financial Burning Bus. And I sort of connect the dots between addictive, compulsive, self-destructive behavior, all, and then you add money to the mix, and people incinerate fortunes. I mean, I've watched people douse themselves in kerosene and set themselves on fire, right after they made millions of dollars, and then they're in the gutter again, and they have to start over. So if you want to go sign up for that, I promise you, it'll be interesting.
I'm on part 4 of that email series, by the way. So
yeah.
I could attest it's fascinating, and everything you discuss. Thank you, Rob, for putting that in the comments to sign up. Thank you, Niti, for your question.
Thanks, Perry.
Yeah, sure.
Who else wants to open up a mic and say something? Julie, go for it.
Yeah. Hi, Perry. How's it going?
Good. Good to see you.
So what I just got that just landed in a really cool epiphany type of way is that if you use the if, then else, it helps with the head trash.
It does.
Because, okay, if you didn't get the value that I was wholeheartedly trying to give you, we have a solution to that. And that really, really helps.
Yes.
It really helped me. So I wanted you to know that.
Yes. And look, there's a back door. If this thing fails, I'm pretty sure this is right. And, this is part of guarantees. Okay. So we had somebody invoke a guarantee not too long ago, and some of our partners on the project were disappointed. It's look, if you're taking the risk, then sometimes you're going to get egg on your face. So you got to get yourself a facial egg scraper. Maybe you don't have one, so go pick one up at the grocery store and scrape the egg off and go on. And okay, also there's this very much in this vein is imposter syndrome. Okay, and imposter syndrome is I don't really deserve to be here. So let me tell you a story about it, because I just experienced this a few months ago. I helped organize a cancer and evolution conference. It was going to be at Harvard, but it ended up on Zoom, and it was people from Harvard, Oxford, MIT, Yale, MD Anderson, all these ridiculous blue chip educational institutions with these scientists. So there was 30 presenters. I was one of them. I give a presentation just like the rest of them, and there was a moment on a Zoom call just like this. We were getting to the end, and we were doing live Q&A, and all these scientists were there, and I took a screenshot, and it was I can't believe that I'm a speaking panelist with 30 other Ivy League scientists. I can't believe this. I take a screenshot. Now, I was having major imposter syndrome that day, and the cicadas in my head were buzzing really loud. So I had to sit back and go, okay, Perry, do you know what they know? No, I'm not an oncologist at Columbia. Do they know what you know? No, they do not. I brought something to that party. I brought what an electrical engineer knows about genetics, if you're curious. I had something to contribute. And imposter syndrome, it's you got two things going on literally at the exact same time. One of them is, I know stuff these people don't know, and they should listen to me. That's half of your head. And the other half is, I can't believe anybody takes me seriously around here because look at all these amazing people. How many of you, give me both hands if you've had both conversations going on in your head at the same time?
Amanda's
Okay.
had it. Imagine
So
that.
Right
you,
here in this room.
you have to know that you know that you know what you know. And you need to also know what you don't know. As long as you know what you don't know, you won't end up being Jim Jones with people drinking pink Kool-Aid and killing themselves.
Wow. We just have a few minutes. I want to give others the chance to say something before our time with Perry ends. Sadly, anybody want to open up their mic and say a few words? Now is the time. Fergie, take it away, my man.
Yeah, hi. I've just been listening as I've just been kind of, getting some stuff done around the house, and the imposter syndrome thing is so I'm an actor performer, also podcaster, and imposter syndrome is soaked in our community. I would say we
Wow.
drink it more than we drink water. And I think what's so fascinating about it is with actors, it often turns into a double layering of imposter syndrome, where you become conditioned to fight off your imposter syndrome, but the more you condition to fight it off, the more you also add on another layer of imposter syndrome of who do you think you are, thinking you can escape this. And so it's just really interesting, especially when you get into not only just understanding who you are, but also understanding who you're not. And understanding, the things you don't know, and being able to humble yourself in that way. What are some things that you offer, or what are some things that you feel are best when it comes to having to humble yourself about the things you don't know, and the things that you have to kind of take a step back and say, I'm not a master at this. I know nothing about this.
Great question.
Okay, so I think one of the most important things that anybody can ever do is read wisdom literature. And I say you should read something written before Gutenberg every day. Why? Okay, because social media is like, look, everybody, I had a California roll for breakfast, right? It's like the most trivial thing in the world, right? If it was written before Gutenberg, it was copies of copies of copies of scrolls hidden in caves, so that when Rome got burned to the ground, that it survived. So if we still have it, it's like really good. So you go read Seneca, go read Solomon, Proverbs in the Bible, go read any stuff like that. And go read the Buddhist, it talks about humility. Like humility is one of the greatest virtues that anybody can ever have. Now, what the wisdom literature also talks about is being wise. Okay, and so like being humble and wise is knowing what you don't know. I also think that, okay, because I do a lot of work in science and biology, I'll promise you something. One blade of grass is 10,000 years ahead of any human technology. If nature doesn't humble you, I don't know what could. Like, okay, so how many of you have lived through like a friggin' freeze epidemic in the last 2 weeks in the Midwest? Okay, like pipes bursting and power going out in Texas, and right? How many of you have lived through a pandemic? Anybody in the last year? Okay. Like, you think we're smarter than nature? There is not a single oncologist in the world that is smarter than any cancer cell. Cancer cells are smarter than all of them, as evidenced by the track record. Okay, so like, I don't know. Those are just kind of off the top. I think people get caught up in careerism, which they become defined by, the only thing I care about is just climbing above everybody else. And then the only thing I compare myself is the people that I climbed over. It's like, dude, why don't you compare yourself to like a dandelion? Like you can't even stop those things. They're all over your yard, right? So like get off your ego trip, man. You're going to be dust someday. You're going to be in a jar on a fireplace mantle. So get a clue.
I feel like that's so connected to control, and it's so connected to the way people refuse to relinquish control. And by people, I'm including myself, and the
All of
idea
us.
that we need to, it's why we put other people down. It's why we climb over others and only look down at others, to have to compare ourselves to nature, to compare to something we have no idea where it came from. As much as we speculate, as much as religious as we are, as whatever we are, we truly don't know where anything comes from. To have to humble ourselves, to compare ourselves to that, man, that's profound. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that take on everything, Fergie. Thank you, Perry. This is why we asked you back. I hope that this is not the last time we cross paths with you in the PodMAX family. We'll continue the conversation. We'll find ways to connect. Yes?
I love your community. It's great to meet you guys. Good to see you. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Perry. We appreciate it. Wow.